Hello and welcome to Shield of Faith. We have a major problem in the modern day church. And if we don't get this under control and reined in, we won't even recognize the church pretty soon. And the problem is that church leaders, pastors, and churches are becoming influenced and seduced by a secular worldview. And in doing so, they're causing their churches to become very lukewarm. And again, if we don't rein this in, if we don't get this under control, soon we won't even recognize the church. So to start this off, I'm going to give you some statistics that were a little shocking when I heard them. So about 3-4 weeks ago, I was reading an article and it was about a study that was done. And the study was looking at how many pastors have a biblical worldview. And at first I thought, well, the number should be 100%. I knew we weren't going to hit 100%, but I thought the number should be pretty high. When I read the article, it kind of blew me away. It said that only 37% of pastors have a biblical worldview. That means 63% of pastors don't even believe the Word of God, that they don't believe that the Bible is true. That's a huge, huge problem. So that kind of led me down a rabbit hole. So I thought, okay, what other studies have been done about this sort of thing? So I started digging and I found another study that was done, and they wanted to know how much time does the average pastor spend in prayer each and every day? Well, the first study that I found about this said 7 minutes. So I was like, no, 7 minutes, come on. That's way too low, right? So I dug and I found another study that spoke about the same thing. I wanted to see how much time does the average pastor spend in prayer each day. And they worded it a little different, and they said that 80% of pastors spend 15 minutes or less per day in prayer. I mean, come on. I mean, this is a huge, huge problem. If 63% of pastors don't believe in the Word of God or don't think this is true, and they only spend 15 minutes or less per day in prayer, what kind of message is that sending to their congregation? I mean, think about it for a minute. And then they wonder why people aren't showing up to church. They wonder why people are falling asleep in the pews and looking at their watches and clocks and wondering how much longer they have to be there. If the pastor doesn't even want to be there, which is clearly obvious sometimes when you're listening to them, if the pastor doesn't want to be there, what makes them think that anybody else would want to be there? So we better rein this in pretty quick, because we're not going to recognize the church pretty soon. They're leading their congregations and their churches down a wide path, right to destruction. And we need to reel this in. And this was illustrated so clearly just a few weeks ago when Roe versus Wade was overturned. I was so happy about that. I wanted to make a video about it. And that should have been a time that the church could come together and really celebrate, because that was a victory. That was one battle that we won. Now, the war isn't won, right? This is a spiritual war that we're in, but that's just one battle. And but as a church, we should have been able to get together and fellowship and really celebrate that. And I had this sick feeling in my stomach that most churches were not going to do that. So I waited a few days, and when Sunday rolled around, I wanted to see what are the churches saying about this overturning of Roe versus Wade. So I started with local churches. With COVID and everything, most churches are posting their sermons online for people to watch. So I went to as many local church sermons as I could find. I started watching them, and I was shocked. Well, I shouldn't be. I had that sick feeling in my stomach, so I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was disappointed, I think is a better way of saying it. None of them brought it up. Not even a peep. Their sermons didn't even have anything to do that you could even relate to it. There was one church that brought it up, and it was really fleeting and really short. And so I thought, well, it's kind of what I expected. I was very disappointed. But then I thought, okay, how about the Christian leaders that have large voices, like national, international voices, they have large platforms. Again, I had this sick feeling in my stomach. I just knew they weren't going to bring it up. But I thought, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I'll wait a few days, a week, and I'll just keep watching and just see if any of them say something. And of course, nothing. It was crickets, right? I went to Joel Osteen, went to all his social media accounts, nothing, not a peep, right? How about that demon-possessed Kenneth Copeland? Right? The guy is just pure evil. Of course, he didn't say anything about it. Then I thought, okay, who has the largest voice right now in the Christian ministry? One of the largest voices is Rick Warren. I thought, is he going to say anything? Crickets. Nothing. Then I thought, okay, well, how about Oprah's favorite preacher, T.D. Jakes? He had anything to say? Of course not. He didn't have anything to say. Now, those are all men, so I thought, okay, well, what are some women that have large platforms in the Christian community? So I thought, well, Beth Moore, right? Beth Moore has a large platform. Does she have anything to say? Nope. Who has the largest voice in women's ministry today? Joyce Meyer, right? I mean, Roe versus Wade was just overturned. Does Joyce Meyer have anything to say? Nothing. Nothing. So, again, we're being compromised because these people, they don't want to be controversial, right? They don't want to upset anybody. They don't want to rock the boat, right? Because if you do that, people will stop showing up, right? And if people aren't showing up, then what? Then there's not as much money flowing, right? So they got to be careful. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to upset anybody. But, in this day and age, as Christians, we should be standing up proud. We should be strong in our convictions and our belief and our morals. We should be able to stand up and talk about these things. And if you don't have the guts to come out and talk about it in public, why aren't we talking about it as a church, though? With other believers coming together in fellowship, we should be able to talk about these things. If you don't want to talk about these things to people in the secular world, you should be able to at least talk about it in fellowship with other Christians. But we don't even do that because so many Christians hold secular beliefs, right? They're just Christians by name. So this is a huge problem, becoming so lukewarm that we're not going to recognize the church pretty soon. Now, I have some more examples of this, but first I have to cite another study. And in this study, they wanted to see what was the average time that a pastor spends putting together their weekly service. And the study said 10 to 15 hours. 10 to 15 hours to put together your weekly sermon? At first I thought, well, okay, maybe they just want to make sure it's really good. But then I had to think to myself, no, that's not what it is. It shouldn't take them 10 to 15 hours to put together a weekly sermon, an hour at most. But it shouldn't surprise me because if you look how so many pastors preach, the way that they deliver their message to their congregation, it's so dry, it's so phoned in, right? It's just they're going through the motions. And they don't even believe. You have to go back to those original studies. If 63% of them don't even believe in the Bible and that this is true, if they're only spending 15 minutes a day in prayer, what more would we expect? If you handed the Bible to a non-believer and said, I want you to put together a sermon, let's say on fear, because there's a lot of fear in the world right now, right? With the war and inflation and everything else that's going on. So let's put together a sermon about fear. But you hand this Bible to a non-believer and you said, I want you to base your sermon or your speech off of what this book says about fear. Well, if it's a non-believer, I would expect that, it would take them probably 10 to 15 hours to put together because they'd have to dig through here and figure out what it says in regards to fear. A pastor, we should be holding to a higher standard. They should know this book backwards and forwards, up one side and down the other, right? They should know exactly what the Bible says about fear. And if they know exactly what this book says about fear, they should be able to just step up and give a sermon about fear. Just step back for a moment. I'm not a pastor. You're not a pastor. But I think most of us can kind of access in our mind, our memory banks, right? Some chapters and verses that have to do with fear, right? I mean, let's just do that for a second. I mean, let's just start at the beginning, Genesis, right? Genesis 15, verse 1. What does it say? God will protect us. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's what that one is about. What's another? Psalm 46, verses 1 through 3. What does that say? God strengthens us, right? I mean, again, I'm paraphrasing, but Psalm 112, verse 7, that we don't need to fear bad news, right? 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, what does it say? Love drives away fear. Okay? I mean, I'm spitballing here, but that's just a little handful of chapters and verses that deal with fear and how we can deal with fear personally, right? And right there is a framework for a sermon. A person should be able to say, if you know the Bible, if you know these chapters and verses, you should be able to just stand up and say, okay, let's talk about fear. What does the Bible say about fear? And start going back to those chapters and verses and give your sermon off of that. But no, it takes them 10 to 15 hours. It's a clear indicator of a lukewarm church, of a pastor that doesn't even want to be there themselves, right? So we really have to do better. As a church, as a congregation, as church leaders, people need to start doing better. I'm sorry, it sounds so judgmental, right? And people might say that I'm tooting my own horn or think I'm better than everybody, and I'm not. I mean, I'm new to this game compared to a lot of you, right? I mean, go back and listen to my testimony. I made a video about it. I mean, I came from a place of being an atheist and worked my way to here. So I'm not better than anybody else. We're all sinners, you know. But as a church, we need to come together in fellowship. We need to do better because it's becoming so lukewarm that, again, I know I sound like a broken record here, but we're not going to recognize the church pretty soon. We're going to lose the church. Okay? But I'm going to give you an example here. You know, of what I was just speaking about these sermons, right? I was listening to a sermon from a local pastor, and it was a really good message. But the way she delivered it, I think probably 95% of the people in the congregation missed the message. You know, and she tried to drive it home by citing a story of when she was a little girl. I think she was 4th or 5th grade or something like that. But as I'm listening, even though it was a good message, I noticed she was reading the entire thing. Everything. She hardly looked up. She was just reading in a real monotone, you know, unemotional way. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, this is your own personal story that happened to you when you were in 4th or 5th grade. You know, if somebody asked me or asked you, tell me a story when you were in 5th grade. My God, I could tell you a bunch of stories of when I was little, you know. But I wouldn't have to write them down, type them out, and then read them to you. I'd be able just to tell you the story. And these pastors, they're just phoning it in. They're just going through the motions, you know. I have to wonder if that was even a true story. Did you just make it up just to drive your point home, and that's why you had to write it down? Because it wasn't true? And if it wasn't true, what kind of message, again, is that sending to your congregation? It goes right over the head. It's totally, it's not inspired. It's not passionate, right? It's not getting anybody engaged. And then we wonder why people don't show up. We wonder why they're falling asleep in the pews. Can't wait to get out of there. I mean, the pastor doesn't even want to be there. I'll give you another example. Another local church, I was watching their sermon. And I'll give them props. I'll give them some kudos here. At least it was biblical. They were reading from the Bible, right? And but that's all they did. They just read from the Bible. It wasn't a teaching. It wasn't a sermon. It was basically everybody open your book up, and this is what I'm just going to read it. Well, you know, this isn't story hour. You know, I'm not in kindergarten. I didn't come here to have you read to me. You know, and again, in this monotone, dry, just boring voice. You know, they don't want to be there. They don't want to be reading what they're reading. So why would you think that your congregation would be engaged as well? So I'll just give you an example of it. So I'm just going to open my Bible up here. And I don't know, let's see, it's Jeremiah. Okay, I'm on the book of Jeremiah, chapter 18, the potter and the clay. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of how this sermon went. Okay, so basically they said we're reading from Jeremiah, chapter 18, the potter and the clay. The Lord gave another message to Jeremiah. He said, go down to the potter's shop and I will speak to you there. So I did as he told me, and I found the potter working at his wheel, but the jar he was making did not turn out as he hoped. So he crushed it into a lump of clay again and started over. And this proceeded, right, for a half an hour to 45 minutes. Just reading, but reading like this, like robotic. I mean, when you do this, this is a disservice to your congregation, and it's a disservice to God. Because you should be delivering the Word of God in a way that fires up your congregation, that gets them engaged, that makes them want to learn more and dig deeper, right? It's just sad. It's a sad state of affairs that we're finding ourselves in, you know? I mean, if you're going to do that, let's just use this one for an example, you know? If you're going to talk to your congregation about a chapter and verse or whatever, I mean, do it like this. Say, okay, everyone, we're going to be talking about Jeremiah, chapter 18. Open your Bibles up. Let's do this together. It's about the potter and the clay. And the Lord gave another message to Jeremiah, and he said, go down to the potter's shop, and I will speak to you there. So he did as he was told, and he went down to that potter's shop, and he found that potter there, and he was working on that clay on his wheel. But it wasn't turning out as he wanted. So he had to kind of just scrap it and start over, right? So I want everybody to stop for a second. I want you to think, when was the last time you were working on a project that was important to you, right? And you had to just kind of scrap it and start over. Think about that. What was the last time that happened to you personally? All right? So now you've engaged the congregation, right? They're starting to envision something in their own mind, something personal to them, right? Once you have them that moment where they can do that, then you move on, right? And then what's the rest of the story say, right? That God, I'm going to paraphrase here, right? But then say, you know, okay, now God is comparing that potter and that clay to your relationship with God, right? You're that pot, you're that clay. God is the potter. He's holding you in his hand, right? And, you know, he doesn't have to like crumple you up and start over again, right? Because through your salvation, right? If you repent from your sins, you ask for forgiveness, God will work with you and he'll rise you back up and resurrect you, and you'll be good. You'll be whole, right? It's like, again, I'm just spitballing here. You know, I'm sure I could do better. But again, you're engaging people, right? I'm not just monotonely just going through the motions. And we should be holding our pastors and our church leaders to a higher standard. Because again, I know I sound like a broken record. We're going to lose the church. You know, we're going to lose it, and we're not going to recognize it pretty soon. So, you know, when we look at these things, we have to ask ourselves some kind of important questions, right? Ask your questions about your church and of yourself to see, is your church lukewarm? Maybe you're lukewarm. You know, maybe there's something in you that seems to be the problem. You know, and again, it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn or that I'm bragging here. I'm not. But we have to shine a light on some of the problems that we're seeing, right? Some of the questions that we can ask ourselves, you know, is, does your church inspire you? You know, after a sermon, you know, you get done with the sermon, you know, we all go into the fellowship area and people are milling around and talking and putting their jackets on and drinking coffee and getting ready to leave. Pay attention the next time you're at church. What are the conversations that are happening in that area? You know, are people talking about the sermon that was just given? I mean, they're talking about, but boy, pastor was on fire today. Boy, I never looked at that chapter, that verse in that way. It really opened my eyes. Boy, I can see how that relates to something I'm going through. You know, do you ever hear those type of conversations? You know, no. You know, do you ever hear people in that area say, hey, you want to come over later today? We can read the Bible together. We can kind of do a Bible study, just the two of us, or just a little small group of us, just impromptu. Do you ever hear that? Hardly ever. Hardly ever. I know one church that I've been to. One. That's so pathetic. Only one church that I've seen that happen in. You know, most churches, they're just turning into coffee drinking social clubs is really what it's becoming. And again, it sounds like I'm pointing the finger, but if it applies, I am. Right? You know, when you leave church and you get in your car and you're driving home, you should be talking to your spouse about what was just said. Talking to your children about it. Right? Can't wait to get home, to open up your Bible and read it yourself and dig deeper. You know, I mean, and that leads me to another question. Because again, so far in this video, it all seems like I'm just picking on the church and the pastors. Now I have to ask you a question, right? When you go home, do you read your Bible? You know, it's a simple yes or no question. Do you read it or not? And if the answer is no, the question is why not? You know, as if it's just on a shelf, just gathering dust, or if it's under your bed in a box or in a closet somewhere and take you half an hour to even find it, ask yourself, why not? Why are you not reading it? You know, for a lot of people, it's just a comprehension problem. You know, they jump in the deep end and they want to read the King James version right off the bat. Well, that's okay for some people, but some people really have a hard time with it, and that's fine. That, you know, because it is. It's the old King's English. You know, sometimes it can be kind of hard to understand. And if you're not comprehending what you're reading, it's not going to be very engaging, and you're not going to be fired up to learn more, right? That's why so many people can stay up till 4 a.m. binge watching Netflix with no problem at all. But if they pick up their Bible, they're asleep in 10 minutes because they're not engaged. They don't understand what they're reading, you know? So take it easy on yourself. You know, you don't have to jump into the deep end, like I said, and start with the King James. Start with something easy. You know, this might sound funny, but, you know, start with something like the Action Bible, okay? I mean, the Action Bible, you can buy this at Walmart, right? It's 800 and some pages long, but it's a comic-based one, right? I know you might roll your eyes and go, oh God, I'm not going to do that. But what it's good at is setting up a framework. It's setting up the framework of the Bible, so you know the order of the books and the chapters, right? You start getting a framework of the stories and the learning and the history that's in the Bible, right? This isn't the end-all be-all, okay? But it's a good place to start if you're just having a hard time. You can get through this in just a couple days, right? You can do that. Then move on to a children's Bible, right? This is the one I had when I was a kid. Go there. It's going to fill in some of the blanks that maybe weren't in the Action Bible or something similar to it. Once you have that, I mean, you could read both of those in a week. Just with those two things alone, you're going to have a better understanding of, again, the order and the flow and some of the teachings of the Bible. Now, once you have that foundation you can build on, Go to something like an NLT or the ESV, something like that. Now you're getting every chapter, every verse. It's all there, but written in a way that you can understand. And that might be as far as you need to go. But maybe you are inspired to go even further. Now you want to go to the King James. Once you've established all that, now the King James just makes sense. You know exactly what it's saying. And you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into that Bible and the Word and the truth of God. Okay? So if you're having problems with your Bible, really search your heart and figure out, well, why? You know, because some people say, well, it's just boring. Well, it's just boring. It's kind of dry reading. It's not dry reading. It's the most supernatural book in the world, you know? It's not dry reading if you understand what's going on in it. And maybe you have to just go back and do some of that preliminary work, you know, with the children's Bible or something to get yourself fired up, right? Again, now this is a job of a pastor as well, to get you fired up about the Word of God. And, you know, I look at church sometimes, whether you go once a week or twice a week, you know, when you're studying on your own, you know, when you're by yourself, you can be fired up for it. But sometimes our momentum starts to slow down a little bit. When you have that weekly like tune-up, you know, at church, it gets the momentum going again. It just keeps you going and you want to go deeper and deeper, right? So you have to ask yourselves that, you know, is your church inspiring you? If not, maybe it's time to find another church, you know. There's going to be some weeks that are just kind of duds, you know, but for the most part, your pastor should really be inspiring you, you know, because there's some awesome, awesome pastors out there. There's awesome churches out there that are just hitting home runs left and right. And if your church isn't doing that for you, it's time to look for another one. I'm sorry to say, right? If you're not reading your own Bible, ask yourself that question. Why am I not? Why am I not reading my own Bible? Right? It might be just as simple as something, I don't understand it. Then do what I said before, right? Makes it so much easier. You know, we have to ask these tough questions of ourselves, and sometimes we don't like the answers we have to give. One of the questions I think is really important, especially if we're talking about a lukewarm church, is, are you ashamed? You know, are you ashamed or embarrassed by your faith? You know, when you're out in public or with friends, even family members, you know, are you embarrassed or ashamed to bring it up in conversation? Now, I'm not saying it to be a jerk for Jesus and shove it down everyone's throat all the time, because that's going to have the opposite effect. It's going to scare people away. We should be drawing people to the faith, not scaring them away. And but when you have those opportunities, when you think, I could speak about this right now, I could speak about the gospel right now, this person needs to hear this. And you'll get those feelings, you know, in the back of your mind or in your stomach that's like, this is a time I can talk about this. Don't miss those opportunities because you're scared or you're maybe even ashamed, right? I mean, what does Luke chapter 9, verse 26 say about that? I mean, Jesus says, don't be ashamed of me and don't be ashamed of the gospel. For when the Son of Man comes back in his full glory, he'll be ashamed of you in front of the Father and the angels. I mean, you don't want that to happen, right? I mean, take those opportunities when they come about to really spread the gospel. Be bold, right? Be proud in your faith and your convictions and your morals. You know, it kind of reminds me of, it's really the scariest words in existence. When Jesus says, depart from me, I never knew you. Don't lead yourself down a road where someday you might hear those words. Okay? So when those opportunities come up, when you can talk about the gospel, you bring it up. You talk. You get out there. Be proud of it. This is nothing to be embarrassed about, especially in this day and age. I know it can be hard because there's so much liberalism out there and people turning away from the faith and you know, they label us as bigots and racist and all these things. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, the Bible says that we're all equal. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter what kind of car you drive or how much money you make. We're all equal in the eyes of God, right? It's just, we need to be bold. We need to be bold and spread the gospel in a way that's not going to scare people away. And I know sometimes in some of my videos I can be pretty bold, I guess you could say, and it could scare some people away, but a lot of my videos they're more geared towards other Christians to really call them out, right? I have to call myself out sometimes, you know. I missed an opportunity not that long ago to talk to somebody about the gospel, and I've kicked my butt ever since, you know. But I'm using that opportunity as a learning experience, and I'm never going to do that again. You know, so I spread it as much as I can. The last question I'm going to ask you And this is probably the most important thing in this video. And if you don't take anything else from this video, please listen to this. You know, when it comes to your church and your pastor and where you're headed, you know, what road is your church leading you down? You know, if you look at Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 through 14, right? What does it say? It's one of my favorite ones. Wide is the path, wide is the road, wide is the gate that leads to destruction. But narrow is the road, narrow is the gate that leads you to life, and very few find it. So when you look at your church, the next time you're sitting there in the pew, I want you to ask yourself, where is your church leading you? Is it leading you down that wide road towards destruction? Or are they leading you down that narrow path, that narrow road to that gate, that narrow gate that so few find? Your pastor can't pull you through the gate kicking and screaming. You know, you have to do some of this work yourself. But at the very least, they should be showing you the directions and leading you down that narrow path so that you can make those decisions and lead yourself through that narrow gate, right? So ask yourself that. You know, is your church leading you in the right direction? I think a lot of you will be shocked to say that no, they're not. They're not willing to talk about the small issues, and they're not willing to talk about the large issues like Roe versus Wade. It's so important to ask ourselves many of these questions. There's more questions we could ask ourselves, but these are some important ones, I think. And if we don't start asking these questions, we're going to lose the church. It's going to be completely unrecognizable. But I encourage you all to make that daily walk with God, right? We have to grow that personal relationship with God each and every day. That's most important. And if you like these type of videos, please hit that like and subscribe button. It just helps this channel grow. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And until next time, God bless.